Yo, brain rots! Welcome back to yet another video of mine. So let me tell you something. The US dollar. That's what we're talking about today. It's it's not as it's not powerful. Let me tell you something. Is the US dollar is not powerful just because America is rich. It is powerful because the entire global economy depends on it, whether they like it or not. When countries trade with each other, pay off debt, buy fuel, or protect themselves from economic shocks, they turn to the dollar. Even nations that do not trust the United States politically still trust its current financially. Okay, this dollar is used by almost every single country on earth in trading, whether they like it or not, whether they hate USA, whether they like USA, it doesn't matter. And this matters because money is not just a tool for buying things. Okay, money controls who can borrow easily, who can survive crisis, and who sets the rules for of global trade. When one country's currency becomes central, that country gains influence far beyond its borders. The story of the dollar is really the story of how global power shifted in the modern world and why that shift never reversed. Okay? Understanding this explains not only why the US became the biggest economic power to ever come in the world, but also why changing this system is far harder than most people think. When the dollar when the dollar was introduced in the around the 1700s, it was not special at all. The United States was a young country, still proving that it could function politically and economically. Global trade that revolved around Europe, especially Britain. The British pound it dominated because Britain controlled shipping routes, insurance markets, global. It even controlled global banking and overseas trade networks. Now, trust plays a massive role in currency power. Countries trusted the pound because Britain had built that trust over centuries. The dollar had no such history, it was new. Even the US economy grew during the 1800s. Global finance remained centered in London. International loans, reserves, contracts continued to be written in pounds. Okay, this is important because it shows that the dollar did not rise simply because America grew richer. For decades, the US was already strong, but the world still preferred another currency. Something much bigger had to change to remove the pound. Now comes the World War One, which weakened economically Europe. Governments spent huge amount of money on warfare, forcing them to borrow heavily. For the first time, the United States became a major lender instead of a borrower. This shift began pulling financial influence across the Atlantic. After the war, many believed the old system would recover. Britain tried to restore the pound's dominance, but the damage was deeper than it appeared. Economic stress it remained, debts piled up, and trust slowly finished. It eroded, you could say. Then comes World War II. That completely destroyed the old order. Europe and Japan suffered massive destruction. Factories were destroyed, infrastructure collapsed, and currencies lost value as governments printed money to survive. Confidence in those currencies collapsed along with their economies. Meanwhile, the United States experienced the opposite. Its industries expanded, employment rose, and production reached unprecedented. Okay, it it became at the top of its time. By the end of the war, the US produced a huge share of the world's goods and held most of the world's gold in a system still based on gold-backed trust that gave the dollar unmatched credibility. At a moment when the world needed stability more than anything else, only one country could realistically provide it. In 1944, global trade leaders met to design a new financial system that would prevent future collapses like this one with the pound. Their goal was simple, and they had only one goal: stability. The solution was to anchor the world to a single currency that everyone trusted. Okay, these currencies were tied to the US dollar, and the dollar itself was tied to gold. This turned the dollar into center of global finance. Holding dollars meant access to global trade. Using dollars reduced uncertainty and encouraged it basically encouraged recovery. Over time, the world built around this system. Banks, trade agreements, debt markets, and reserves slowly became dollar based. This mattered more than people realized. Once infrastructure forms around one single currency, changing it becomes extremely dangerous. When the US ended the gold link, dollar to gold, that link in 1971, many expected a disaster, but the system held itself because trust had shifted from gold to the institutions and scale behind the dollar. The dollar became flat money, meaning its value depended on confidence in the US economy rather than metal. The world accepted this because abandoning the dollar would destabilize everything built on top of it. People often ask, probably you will too, why another country or another currency will not take over dollar, and why hasn't it taken over it by now like dollar took over the pound? The reason is not that alternatives don't exist, but that none of these alternatives combine to have all the qualities needed to replace the dollar. A global currency must be trusted during crisis, freely usable, backed by deep financial markets, protected by strong law, supported by a massive economy, and very few currencies come even close to that. The euro covers multiple countries, which sounds powerful, but that creates political division. Okay, economic decisions are slower, and in crisis, unity becomes fragile. This makes long term trust really hard. China's economy is large, but its currency is tightly controlled. Investors and governments hesitate to rely on a currency that cannot move freely or predict during emergencies. Control creates stability domestically, but hesitation internationally. Okay? Most other currencies are simply too small. They lack the depth, liquidity, and global reach needed to support trillions in trade and reserves. The dollar remains dominant because the system behind it still works. US financial markets remain the deepest and most liquid in the world. The legal system protects contracts. Investors know how they can access dollars quickly during stress. Historically, global currencies collapse when the power behind them collapses. That moment came for Rome, Spain, Britain. It has not come for United States. Until it does, and if it does, there is no replacement. strong enough to take over. The dollar dominates not because it is perfect, but because it is the safest option in an uncertain world. And as long as the world values stability over risk, the dollar will remain at the center of global finance.